I was on a call the other day with another financial advisor, and they said, "Do you know the one thing that makes a huge difference in someone's net worth in retirement?" And so I started ticking off a couple of things that I thought it might be. And then he replied, "Those are probably correct, but it's not what I was thinking of." So in just a moment, I'm going to tell you their answer. But that question made me start thinking about the traits that most successful retirees have in common. And because of this channel and the retirement planning firm that I run, I have the opportunity to talk with literally hundreds of people who are in retirement, many of which are in the top quintile of retirees by net worth. And as I thought about it, I realized that most of the people I talk with have a lot in common. And so today I want to talk about what those common traits are. In fact, I ran across a video recently that gives a name to these retirees. They weren't talking about retirees specifically, but I thought the term they used was perfect. They called it quiet wealth. The quietly wealthy, they said, don't flaunt their wealth or have anything to prove. Instead, they prioritize contentment and peace of mind. I love that. So I want to talk more about that today. But first, my name is Kevin Lum. I'm a certified financial planner, and this channel is dedicated to helping 1 million people retire without worry. So back to the conversation at the beginning of this video, because if I don't close the loop, I will get hate in the comments. The financial advisor I was talking to said that according to a study they'd read, the one thing that increases someone's net worth in retirement by almost 10x is owning their own home over renting. And that's important. That's tangible. But many of the traits of the quietly wealthy retirees are a bit harder to quantify, yet they're just as powerful, if not more so. So let's dive in. First, they're constant learners, or they're always learning. Now, partially, I probably come into contact with more people who are lifelong learners because, like you, they are here on YouTube trying to figure things out. But one of the things that I've realized about successful retirees is that they're often lifelong students. They're curious about the world around them. They're constantly trying to learn more or to hone their skills. And here's what's interesting. They're not learning just about retirement planning. They're learning about everything. In fact, that's one of the things that makes running my firm so much fun, is because I love all my clients, because each one is so unique and smart in their own way. I'm always learning something new, whether it's about drone technology or mid-century modern furniture or cave diving. I'm always learning some new thing from a client. And that's one of the things that the quietly wealthy retirees have in common, is that they are often lifelong learners. And what I find is that that curiosity compounds over time. The more they learn, the better decisions they make, not just about finances, but in all aspects of their lives, because lifelong learners see connections that others miss. They adapt to change. They typically are people who don't say, "I'm too old to learn that." And I love that. I love working with and being around lifetime learners. And I think that's one of the reasons that I like talking with many of the people that I engage with here on YouTube, is because you're lifelong learners about 1 million different things. And I get to learn a bit about that. The second thing I've noticed about the quietly wealthy is that they often have very normal careers. Most of the people I encounter who are in the top quintile of retirement wealth had normal jobs, right? Engineers and teachers and business owners and various sorts of professionals, right? They didn't win the lottery. They weren't trust fund babies or crypto millionaires who got lucky. And it's the same thing that we see in the book, The Millionaire Next Door, that stable work often leads to incredible financial freedom. They optimized for steady income, savings, and peace, not status, right? They lived below their means and they invested the rest. They chose careers with good benefits. They contributed to their 401k, and they often didn't hop from one shiny thing to the next. And very few of the people that I encounter that have significant wealth is it from some giant inheritance or a large business exit. Instead, it's just ordinary people who worked normal jobs, who lived below their means and invested the rest. The math is simple. Earn consistently, spend less than you make, and invest the difference for 30 to 40 years. Now, it is not exciting, but it works over and over again. Number 3, they invest boring. Most retirees that I encounter have fairly boring portfolios. And I mean that as a compliment, right? They might have one or two individual stocks. A few people got lucky on Tesla or Nvidia or Palantir or some other stock. But typically they have index funds and real estate and maybe a small business that they loved. Not a ton of fancy financial instruments or IULs. I'm constantly seeing videos about, the secrets of the rich. They have IULs. I rarely ever encounter a successor retiree that has a significant amount of assets that has all their money in an IUL, right? So they don't use fancy financial instruments like private equity and venture capital. It doesn't mean nobody does, but as a general rule, many of the retirees that I meet have very simple portfolios. There's no complex derivatives or day trading or chasing the latest meme stocks. Most of my clients and most of the people I encounter in this channel are not spending all their time on Reddit and Wall Street bets. A few of you are, but as a general rule, most of you are. And they understand often that complexity is the enemy of returns. One of the things I've learned is that one of the most important things about your portfolio is having a portfolio that you can hold. If you have a portfolio that you can sit with during the good times and the bad times, you're going to far outperform people who are constantly trying to time the market and jumping in and jumping out, or in highly volatile stocks, right? Trying to make money on the way up and then getting out the right time. Most retirees that I meet, they put their money in the market and then they let the market do what the market does. For most of the retirees that I encounter, the goal isn't excitement. It's freedom and security. They would rather be quietly wealthy than loudly stressed. They sleep well at night knowing that their portfolio won't implode because of one investment is going to blow everything up. They're well diversified. It may be boring, but they can also sleep at night. Next, most of the quietly wealthy retirees that I meet, they are patient and consistent. They understand that compounding only works if you give it time. And most of these people who retire well with a significant amount of assets, they typically have invested automatically. So each month, right, they have, or each week or paycheck, they have money going in. They invest it, they ignore the noise, and then they let time do the heavy lifting. When the markets crashed, they didn't panic and sell. When the market soared, they didn't get greedy and begin investing on margin. They just kept doing what they've always done. Their goal was not to get rich quick. And one of the problems I see, particularly with younger investors, and there's so many get rich quick schemes at our fingertips, right? We have options and derivatives and crypto and all these things. And I often see people chasing trends, trying to get rich quick, and often they end up losing money. And the thing that I see over and over again with success retirees is that they were patient and they were consistent. They understand that wealth isn't built in a year or even 5 years. It's built over decades of consistent, boring, patient action. Next, they value happiness and security over status. And this is, again, what you see in the millionaire next door, right? Success isn't about fame or fancy titles. It's about freedom. For the quietly wealthy, happiness means financial independence. It means making work optional. It means not having to worry about the next paycheck. Right? It's also prioritizing. I see this over and over with the people that I have the pleasure of working with, is that they value relationships and time with their family and friends. They spend time on things that matter, right? Hobbies and volunteering and all the other things, their health. Because as I talked about in last week's video, one of the most important things you can invest in is your health, because no amount of money in your portfolio is worth it if you don't have your health. One of the things I see over and over again with the quietly wealthy retiree is that they understand that true wealth equals peace and purpose and time and freedom. That doesn't mean none of them have a big house or a fancy car, but that is not the main goal in life. And that leads into the next thing I see, at least among a subset. There's another subset of people that I work with, and I'm trying to push them in this way. I'm trying to encourage people to spend intentionally. This is something that a lot of people have to be pushed on, because often you build wealth through being frugal, living below your means, and the spending part is the hardest thing to do. But the happiest retirees that I see, they don't confuse frugality with scarcity, right? They're not cheap, but they are intentional with the way they spend their money. Ramit Sethi says it this way: spend extravagantly on what you love, cut ruthlessly what you don't. Another thing I would add to that is buy quality, not quantity. In our world of fast fashion and cheap products, it's worth investing in things that last, whether it's clothes or a reliable car or a bed that helps you sleep better at night. Let money become a tool to live a better life, not to look richer. Next, the quietly wealthy enjoy simple hobbies. Joy doesn't have to be expensive or performative. One of the things that impresses me most about the people I meet is how content they are. When I press clients to spend more money, they'll often say, I have everything I want. I'm not even sure what I would spend money on. Quiet wealth enjoys everyday moments, right? The home cooked meal, a morning walk, time with loved ones, reading a good book, tending a garden, riding a bicycle, whatever that thing is that brings you joy. And I see this in the comments all the time. People tell me some of the things that they do that brings them peace and brings them joy and brings them happiness. For the quietly wealthy retiree, the goal isn't to impress, it's contentment. And often these simple pleasures are what they talk about most enthusiastically, not the amount of money that they have in their portfolio. So, in conclusion, here's what I've learned from hundreds of conversations with successful retirees. Quiet wealth isn't just about money, it is a mindset. It is a way of moving through the world that prioritizes substance over style, peace over perception, contentment over comparison. The quietly wealthy understand something profound. They see money as a tool, not as a way to keep score. And I talked about that in last week's video because at the end of the day, the goal isn't to be the richest person in the cemetery. It's to live a life so fulfilling that money just becomes a tool, not the goal. That's quiet wealth. And that's what I see in the happiest and the most successful retirees that I know. And that's something worth working towards. One consistent day at a time. Now, this past couple weeks, my videos have been a little less technical and a little more philosophical because one of the things I realized is that the psychology of retirement or the philosophy of retirement is just as important as the math of retirement. So I'd be interested to know if anything in this video resonated with you. If you would, just leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. I try to reply to as many of them as I can, particularly early on, and then it gets a little overwhelming and I can't keep up with them all. But I'd love to hear from you. And then finally, if you're thinking about spending and money and where your money goes, and you're kind of curious how retirees spend their money, I have a whole video on how retirees spend their money, and you can watch that now.